Let's look at the second part of Chapter 3. We're going to look now at the second most common verb in French, avoir, which means to have. So avoir is the infinitive, the dictionary form, and être and avoir are by far the two most common verbs, not just because they're used a lot in communicating, but they're also auxiliary verbs or helping verbs. They're going to be used in the conjugation of other verb tenses. So just like être, we're going to see constantly, avoir, we might even see more often because of all the conjugations that it occurs in. So once again, I'm going to ask you to memorize these forms so that you don't ever have to look them up. So the first person singular is j'ai, meaning I have. So the je, the J-E, is contracted to J apostrophe, which is mandatory. It's not, no contractions are optional in French. They're always mandatory. So j'ai is I have, tu as is you have, il a is he has. The plural, we have nous avons, we have, vous avez, you have, and ils ont, they have. So we have the six forms, and they're all spelled differently. So the first person singular is this AI ending, which is a little different than what we've seen before. The tu as, there's often an S on the second person singular, and the third person singular tends to be the shortest form, il a. Now notice it doesn't have an accent mark on it. When it has an accent mark on it, it's a preposition a, meaning to, it, or to, in, or at. When it doesn't have the accent mark, it's a verb. So you want to make sure to never, if you ever see the word a, the letter A, always ask yourself, is it a verb? That means no accent. Or is it a preposition? That means an accent. So you always want to pay attention to that. For the plural, we have the nous avons, where we've got the AV stem, like in the infinitive, followed by ONS, the common ending for new. And the same thing for vous, we've got the EZ on the AV ending. And then for the ils ont, it's just the ONT ending, which it's kind of like ils sont, that was they are, but there's no stem at all. In fact, none of the singulars have stems, and only the first and second person of the plural have stem. So this ils ont is they have. So an example of a sentence is, il a un ami. He has a friend. Now let's look at an impersonal expression using avoir. And there's a good chance we've already seen this before. Il y a. It means there is or there are. Now it's actually three words, but we're not going to worry about trying to translate it word for word. We'll come to that middle word y some other time. It's a source of a lot of confusion. But what you want to do now is to note that there's going to be this three-word expression, il, I, the y is pronounced e, a, quite often, and that means there is or there are. Now the verb a is always singular, but we'll translate it there are if what follows is plural. So let's look at this sentence. Il y a beaucoup de choses. So we've got our three-word expression, il y a, and then we've got beaucoup de, which means lots of. Beaucoup de means lots of. Choses is a general word for things. It's a really unspecific word. So, il y a beaucoup de choses, there are lots of things. Next one, we have il y a, so that's going to be there is or there are. Un Américain parmi nous. An American among us. There is an American among us. So here it's translated there are because lots of things are plural. Here it's translated there is because an American among us is singular. Now notice American is written with a capital A because it describes a person. If we were using it as an adjective, it would be a small a. And if we were speaking of American English, and sometimes they just call that American. Do you speak American or do you speak English? Sometimes they'll say in French because the accents are different, the vocabulary and spelling is a little different. It would be a small a also, but when it's a capital A, that means it's referring to a person. Now in the textbook, there's other avoir idioms on page 39, and I encourage you to memorize those also. We're not going to take the time to run through them, but go through them and make sure you understand them. Now let's talk about a simple way of negating verbs. This is the type of negation that you'll see it when we've got negative forms of verbs. At least 50% of them will be ne pas. The other 50% we'll cover later. It's more complicated. But we've got ne and pas around the conjugated verb. So if we can have the sentence, je ne suis pas fatigué. So we have the je, suis, and fatigué would mean I am tired. But to make it negative, we would put the ne in front of the suis and the pas after the suis. And that would be translated, I am not tired. So we've got two words in French, but only one word in English in the translation. But that's not always exactly how it goes. Il n'explique pas les raisons. He, and then we've got explique as the main conjugated verb, to explain the reasons. And then il n'explique pas means he does not explain the reasons. So here we have got, we translate ne and pas as does not. It wouldn't sound very good to say he explains not the reasons. We would say he does not explain the reasons. So we're going to translate it as does not or not, depending on the verb and the context, but it's basically a negation of the verb. Okay, now note that after a negated verb, un and une change form, and they usually become de. Another use of the small d e verb. So if we have the sentence, il a un livre, that's a as avoir, to have. That means he has a book. If we make it negative, put the ne and the pas around the avoir, and so the ne, because those little e's contract all the time. Il n'a pas de livre. That means he does not have a book. So that's the does not is the ne pas. Now here we have il n'a pas de livre with an s, and we can translate that as he does not have any books. So here we've got de translated as any. Here we've got de translated as a. And you know what? There's not a whole lot of difference between he does not have a book and he does not have any books in English, but there's slight differences. I might ask you, where's his book? And you can say, oh, he doesn't have a book. He forgot to bring it. But if I ask you about somebody, what does he do in his spare time? And you say, well, he doesn't have any books. You're saying something about his literacy. And this he does not have any books is pretty similar to the idea of he has no books. So both of those are good translations. Now here is an exercise. We've got 10 sentences, including a very famous one. So work on translating all 10 of these sentences, and when you have written down for translations, you can come back and look at the next video with the answers.